John Schneider spoke out about Alek Manoah and his second demotion to the minor leagues. And he just revealed that he's just not ready to compete yet in game action. And that's the reason as to why he hasn't stepped foot on a mound ever since being optioned down to AAA Buffalo. So I'll break that down on this episode of Jays Digest, as well as Ricky Tiedemann. A lot of fans are calling for the youth movement for the Toronto Blue Jays. That's a pretty good place to start. So I'll break down that and much more coming up next. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And of course, after a succession of negative videos on the Toronto Blue Jays and a succession of call-outs and calling for people's heads and asking for people to get fired, they now find themselves a half a game back out of a playoff spot for the final wild card spot. I still stand behind my statements that I made in the last couple of videos in the last couple of days. I still think this team is flawed. I still think they need to change some things, but that's the way baseball works. You never know what you're going to get from day to day. It's a mixed bag, and the Jays managed to squeak out a win yesterday against the Boston Red Sox. They're going for the series win today. First pitch is at 3:07, so make sure to tune into that. But, Nick, we got some interesting news here and some totally polar opposites when it comes to trajectory and career trajectory. So Alek Manoah is at the lowest possible point that he could be at right now, and Ricky Tiedemann is just soaring in the minor leagues for the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't know if he's going to start next year in the major leagues, but there's a good chance that he's going to get called up and start next year in AAA at the very least.
Yeah, and we're kind of talking about two different pitchers, like you said. And we also have a little tidbit at the end that you guys might want to stay tuned for. But before we get into the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 8,300, and your support's been unbelievable. So Schneider, speaks out on Alek Manoah and kind of reveals some of the truth towards, just the whole situation regarding, the former ace, the former Cy Young finalist, third in the Cy Young voting. So here's what was revealed a couple days ago, and it's super interesting here. So he went on a MLB radio on Sirius XM and said, quote, he is not ready to compete. Now, Blue Jays manager, at the current time, he feels he's not ready to compete. Now, Peter Cicero went on and, kind of aired out on him a little bit what's going on here. And then there's tons of other stuff, more screenshots I'll get into in a second. Of course, there was an article posted by Thomas Hall. You should go check it out that goes more in depth about the situation with some, inside, knowledge there, essentially saying it's a messy situation. Manoah, like we touched on a couple of videos ago, maybe 4 or 5 days ago, he's not ready to compete. He's not feeling, he kind of quit on the Blue Jays a little bit. I know a lot of people are using that kind of headline that, he quit on the Jays, and it's a really, a realistic case that he did do that for now. But Peter, manager doesn't often talk about these situations, but he said not ready to compete, which is blasphemous considering where he was a year ago today.
Well, John Schneider hasn't exactly been the most popular guy when it comes to quotes either. In the past couple of days, he's had a couple of of misconstrued quotes, you could say. I mean, he's just having a rough time with the media nowadays. But yeah, this is look no further than that. I mean, apparently the Jays were not happy with Alek Manoah coming into the season. They thought he didn't come in prepared. He didn't come in well conditioned, and obviously he earned to start on opening day. He was their most successful pitcher last year. You could talk about Kevin Gausman all you want, but Alek Manoah was the one that finished third in Cy Young voting, and he was the guy that was looking like he was going to be the pillar of this rotation for years to come, and a Blue Jay for life. I mean, that's what people were asking for. That's what we were asking for in the offseason. Make this guy a Blue Jay for life. But then he does a full 180. He has the worst possible year that he could have. An ERA approaching 6, can't find the strike zone. His stuff is just lifeless, and I've never seen it before. I've never seen a drop off that drastic from a guy who finishes third in Cy Young voting and then just turns into the worst pitching at starting baseball. It was truly baffling, Nick. I didn't know what to make of it. And there's got to be something more that the Jays have really been holding in-house. And they can't be happy with the way that this whole situation has been handled. Obviously, you got to put some blame on both sides. I'm sure Alek Manoah is to blame for most of it. He just didn't come in prepared to the season. He didn't look good at any stretch of the year either. And the Blue Jays, I mean, they called him back up way too quickly. They rushed his development in a sense, and they forced him into a spot that was kind of unfair to him. They knew that he wasn't going to come up and produce, and they still forced him into that spot. So it's a bad look on both sides. That relationship is going to need some ironing out because it can't be in a good spot right now. So hopefully they can figure that out. But yeah, this has been a debacle from the start to finish.
Yeah, and looking at if you tuned into our video yesterday, you'll know what I'm about to pop up here. It's from Mike Boboa again. Whether the report's fully accurate, we're unsure. He is a fairly reliable reporter, but kind of glossed over it a bit yesterday. Ownership, according to him, is not thrilled with how the season has gone, of course, and how they aren't happy with the way the Manoah situation was handled internally. So, whether that's from, Ross Atkins, whether that's from John Schneider, whether that's in general, that's another thing to keep in mind is that I think the whole situation is a disaster from the player side, from the coaching side, just the complete way it was handled. He was called up too early. Everyone knew it at the time. You kind of had to a degree because of the pitching situation, but I don't know. And then we have this saying, incredibly disappointed to hear that Manoah was, very upset at the Jays front office for sending him down, and that's kind of what we covered in, a video a few days ago. He was mad that he was sent down because of performance reasons, even though his performance was horrible. So, Peter, any quick thoughts on this? Final thoughts before we wrap up and move on to a pitching prospect with a bit more hype as of late?
Well, I could see why he would be disappointed, but he has no one else to blame but himself.
Yep.
Obviously, you never want to fall off a cliff in that way. You never want to go from the top of the mountain all the way to the bottom. And that's what happened with Alek Manoah. Who would be happy with getting sent down after being on top of the world just 8-9 months ago, right? So obviously he's going to be unhappy with the demotion. I'm sure he could have handled it a lot better, but the Jays messed this up as well. Let's not just pin all the blame on Alek Manoah. I still think he's a part of this team, part of the future of this team. And it's a player's business nowadays. You look at the NBA, you got to keep the players happy. You look at the NHL to a certain extent, you got to keep the players happy. So at the end of the day, if the guys that are putting the uniform on for you are not happy, you got to make sure that they are. And if Alek Manoah has a beef with this front office and the Blue Jays ownership values Alek Manoah going forward, I wouldn't be shocked if they make some changes to keep the big man happy and just to keep all the players happy. It's a players' league now.
Yeah, that's true. And personally, I don't really like the way it was handled from, either side. And I don't like that Manoah was, I understand why he was upset, but I think even he will probably agree maybe a year from now that he could have handled it differently.
I agree. I agree with you, Nick. Absolutely, yeah.
And touching on a prospect that hasn't had much beef or anything like that is a major Ricky Tiedemann update. And this dropped a couple of days ago. He did have a start yesterday. And Peter, this is our prized possession. You're talking about him for so long now, and he's starting to, the numbers aren't exactly there, and we talked about this off camera. He hasn't been dominant in Double-A. However, that aside, prospect Ricky Tiedemann will stay with the Jays' New Hampshire affiliate through the end of the Double-A season this weekend, which was, yesterday and this current weekend. And after that, plans are developing. Possible he joins the Triple-A for some added seasoning and reps. So, Peter, he started yesterday's game. He did okay. He went 2 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs, gave up a home run to a Yankees prospect, Spencer Jones. But again, numbers aren't the most important thing here. The big thing is that he is going to be getting called up to AAA at some point very, very soon. Probably to give him one extra start because the AAA season has one extra start for Ricky Tiedemann if he goes to that, and reps are the most important thing for him at this very moment. The actual results aren't the biggest thing, but coming back from his injury, he's been striking out a ton. He needs to figure out his control a little bit, but he is, and among, analysts and reporters and people who, evaluate prospects a lot more than we do on MLB Pipeline and things like that, they are raving about Ricky Tiedemann and his stuff. He's looking like, what Nate Pearson maybe should have been if everything would have panned out, except from the left-handed side.
Give me a Randy Johnson 2.0 comparison here
with
Ricky Tiedemann. From the left-hand side, he just got unbelievable stuff. His slider, his changeup, and his fastball, too, is electric. He's got 3+ pitches, and that's going to play at any level. Obviously, you look at his advanced numbers, you look at his just numbers and at face value, and they're not very impressive. He's got a 5 ERA or so in Double-A, but that's the hardest league. That's the hardest level in minor league baseball because that's where all the best prospects go. Spencer Jones, the guy that hit a home run off him yesterday, is a top 100 prospect in all of baseball. He's one of the Yankees' top prospects. So that's no slouch that he's facing. He's not facing some journeyman in AAA. These are legitimate prospects that they're going up against day in, day out. So I don't think Ricky Tiedemann is going to be ready to hit the MLB level at the start of next year. But I'm looking at Eury Perez of the Miami Marlins as a specific comparison for him and how the Jays should manage their workload. So Ricky Tiedemann, I expect him to come up next year at some point. maybe go 4 or 5 innings of starts, maybe get sent back down after, like Yuri Perez did with the Miami Marlins, and then get called up for a playoff race. So that's what I'm expecting. Just manage his workload, slowly build him up, because right now he's going 2, 3 innings after his injury, but before he was maybe going 3 or 4. So you want to get him up to the 5 or 6 range, or maybe 80 to 90 pitches in that sense, and then he'll be able to come up and contribute for the big league team. I'm just super excited to see him in a Blue Jay uniform. I think it's inevitable. I think his stuff is just too good for him not to pan out at the big league level. And he's just so much fun to watch, Nick. Like I think might be a trip to Buffalo might be in the cards here. Go see him in with the Bisons.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because it kind of, how they plan out this Ricky Tiedemann situation is going to be very important because we don't really have a fifth starter for next year as of right now. Ryu is probably going to walk away. I doubt they re-sign him. So it'll probably be a mix between Manoah, maybe a couple of internal guys. Maybe they sign a fifth starter, or maybe, and it's very unlikely, they could, see what Ricky Tiedemann is doing. But I think I agree with you. He hasn't had the innings yet this season, specifically because of his injury, to really fight for a spot next year. Maybe he does. We don't really know. But I'd see probably maybe a month or two into the season, get him some reps and see how it goes from there. But it'll be very interesting to see. Let us know what your thoughts are on that. And Peter, before we wrap up, it kind of broke. I woke up to this weird news, and there's some Ohtani drama. Obviously not directly related to the Jays, but if you watched the end of our video yesterday, we were pledging for Ohtani to the Jays in 2024, and we might be one step closer to that as Shohei Ohtani has cleared out his locker after last night's game, per Jeff Fletcher. An update from the Angels on what happened is expected later today, and we don't know what that is right now, but from what I was reading, the Angels weren't prepared for Ohtani to do this, so this seems like something he did under his own kind of, I guess, thoughts or whatever it is. Maybe the Angels know and they just aren't saying it, but maybe, and the most likely situation is that he decided to shut himself down. And Peter, I don't know, it's getting pretty bad if you're an Angels fan out there right now with everything that's happened. And there's also some drama about a Mike Trout potential trade, which we'll cover at some point. But any quick thoughts on this before we wrap up?
I think the biggest blunder in baseball history was just not trading him at the deadline. And I understand the standpoint of the Angels. They wanted to kind of make one last push because they know they're not going to have Ohtani past this season. But at the same time, maybe he wants to stay. Maybe they came to an agreement here that, okay, I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to try to go get the surgery that I need, because he has a torn UCL. He's been hitting home runs with a torn UCL in his right elbow, and the guy's just a freak. I think he cost himself probably north of $150 million in free agency, because his future as a pitcher is in question. He's already had elbow surgery before. Is this going to be the second time here? So I think Ohtani might transition to being a reliever later on in his career. Maybe has a couple more years as a starter. But any team would be lucky to have him, and I'm sure a team would give him 500, 550, maybe even 600 million, just because he's that much of a megastar and can bring that much money into your franchise. So it sucks to see him get hurt because he is so electric to watch and so much fun. But yeah, hopefully everything works out for him. Hopefully we could get to see him on the mound again as well. And hopefully the next time we do see him on the mound, he's at the Rogers Center playing for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, and we'll keep a close eye on that situation. But let us know what your thoughts are on that, and that'll wrap it up. And just like you said earlier in the video, baseball is weird. Baseball changes quickly, and if we win today and the Mariners lose, we're back in a playoff spot, as crazy as that sounds. So we'll see you guys in tomorrow's video, and hopefully the Jays can take care of business today, although some of you may think that that's doubtful. But we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.